The NFL's most controversial story takes a new turn. For over a decade, the NFL and the media told us a story that shocked the league. The infamous bullying scandal involving former Dolphins tackle Jonathan Martin and veteran offensive lineman Richie Incognito. We were told Martin was a victim. We were told Incognito was a villain. We were told that the NFL had a culture problem that needed fixing. But now, new revelations raise a serious question. Was the story more complicated than we were led to believe? Let's take a closer look at what really happened. The incident that shocked the NFL. In 2013, Jonathan Martin suddenly left the Miami Dolphins. Reports soon surfaced that he had been subjected to harassment from teammates, with Richie Incognito at the center of it all. The NFL launched an independent investigation led by attorney Ted Wells, which concluded that Incognito and other Dolphins players had engaged in conduct that could be considered workplace harassment. The media ran with the story. Incognito was suspended. Martin was portrayed as a victim of a toxic NFL locker room. The league promised to implement new policies to prevent similar incidents. Case closed, right? Well, new perspectives have emerged over the years, suggesting that the situation may not have been as black and white as initially portrayed. New revelations. Martin speaks out. In a recent ESPN article revisiting Jonathan Martin's post-NFL life, an intriguing quote surfaced. "I never believed for a second I was being bullied. It's a story that I've been trying to fix for 10 years. This statement raises a major question. Was the original narrative an oversimplification of a much more complex situation? It's clear that Martin faced personal struggles, including mental health challenges, which he has openly discussed. But if he himself questions the bullying narrative, then how much of the initial story was shaped by outside influences? Did the media sensationalize the situation? Did the league use the scandal to push a larger agenda? These are the questions that deserve a second look. Was Incognito treated unfairly? Richie Incognito for years was branded as the villain in this saga. He was suspended, criticized, and essentially exiled from the NFL for a time. But those who played alongside him painted a different picture. Many teammates defended Incognito, claiming that the locker room culture was misunderstood and that the interactions between players were more about team bonding than bullying. Does that excuse everything that happened? No. But it does suggest that the full story was never as simple as good versus evil. The NFL's bigger agenda, changing locker room culture. The NFL's culture shift, necessary progress or image control. There's no denying that the NFL has undergone a major cultural shift in the last decade. The league has cracked down on locker room hazing, implemented stricter conduct policies, and made efforts to present a more inclusive image. These changes were driven by multiple factors: public pressure, legal liabilities, and a broader societal push for reform in professional sports. A league under scrutiny. The NFL has always been a tough, physical league. For decades, the old-school mentality dominated locker rooms. Rookies were expected to endure hazing, players were encouraged to show toughness, and conflicts were often settled behind closed doors. But as media coverage intensified and player activism grew, the league could no longer ignore issues like workplace harassment, mental health struggles, and the impact of its culture on player well-being. Several high-profile incidents, including the Jonathan Martin Richie Incognito scandal, served as tipping points. The NFL faced a critical decision: maintain its traditional culture, risking further controversy and lawsuits, adapt to changing social expectations, and implement reforms. The league chose the latter: the crackdown on locker room hazing. Before the Martin-Incognito scandal, hazing was considered a rite of passage in the NFL. Rookies often endured pranks, paid for expensive team dinners, or even suffered verbal taunts from veterans. Some saw it as harmless fun. Others argued it crossed the line into abuse and psychological harm. In the aftermath of the scandal, NFL teams began eliminating most forms of hazing. Fines and suspensions were introduced for excessive hazing. Teams enforced strict conduct policies in locker rooms. Rookies were given more protections from veteran pranks. Supporters of these changes argue that the NFL was simply modernizing, ensuring that players, many of whom are young men in their early 20s, were treated with professionalism and respect. But critics believe the league overcorrected, sanitizing the NFL's warrior-like culture and removing the very elements that made it unique. Protecting players or protecting the league's image? Some argue that the NFL's response was less about player well-being and more about public relations. The league has faced numerous scandals in recent years, from domestic violence cases to concussion lawsuits. Each controversy chipped away at the NFL's reputation, prompting them to take aggressive steps to control the narrative. Was the Martin-Incognito scandal used as a tool to push a larger agenda? Did the league capitalize on the controversy to push anti-bullying campaigns and present a kinder, gentler image? Was Incognito made an example of not because of his actions, but because the NFL needed a scapegoat?